The Ballad of Jed and the Hidden Gold. This is the story of a man named Jed, a humble and hardworking mountaineer who lived deep in the hills. Life was not easy for Jed. He was a poor man who struggled every single day to keep his family fed and a roof over their heads. He spent his time hunting in the woods, hoping to bring home enough food for the evening meal. One afternoon, while he was out shooting at some food to fill the cooking pot, something incredible happened. As his bullet hit the earth, the ground began to tremble and shake. Up from the deep soil came a bubbling crude liquid. It was oil, the substance often called black gold or Texas tea. In the blink of an eye, old Jed became a millionaire. The news traveled fast among his kinfolk, and they gathered around to offer their advice. They told him that a man with his new wealth should not stay in the hills anymore. They insisted that California was the place he ought to be. So, they loaded up their old truck with everything they owned and moved to the land of luxury, known as Beverly Hills. It was a place filled with swimming pools and famous movie stars. They became known to everyone as the Beverly Hillbillies. One sunny morning in their new mansion, Jed looked out at his family. He saw his daughter, Ellie Mae, tending to her many animals. He called out to her, telling her that she was looking very pretty that day. Ellie Mae smiled and thanked him. She mentioned that a young man named Mark Templeton was coming over to see her. He was bringing a special gift, a scuba suit. Mark was a brave member of the Navy, and he wanted to teach Ellie Mae how to be a frog woman, which meant learning how to swim deep underwater. Jed noticed that the two young people were hitting it off very well. Ellie Mae admitted that she liked Mark a whole lot, but she felt sad that Granny did not seem to like him at all. Jed tried to reassure her. He explained that Granny likely liked him just fine, but she simply did not understand what he did for a living. She had never heard of a Navy frogman before. Every time Mark talked about diving, Granny would tell him to stay out of the water. Like many older folks who never learned to swim, Granny was simply scared of the water and worried for his safety. Dreams and misunderstandings. Meanwhile, Miss Jane Hathaway, a kind friend of the family, was driving Granny home. Granny had been having very strange dreams lately, and Miss Jane had arranged for her to see a professional named Dr. Klingler. Granny thanked her for the help, but she remained very troubled. She told Miss Jane that it was more than just bad dreams. She was convinced that every time Mark Templeton went into the water, he actually turned into a frog. Miss Jane tried to explain that being a frogman was just his career in the Navy. Granny, however, wondered why he could not have joined the army instead. She worried that if he were in the army, he might go underground and turn into a gopher man. Miss Jane urged her not to worry and told her to return to Dr. Klingler if the nightmares continued. When Granny got back to the house, she found a small frog in a cage. In her mind, she believed this frog was actually Mark after he had gone swimming. She spoke to the frog, pleading with him to stay out of the cement pond. She felt she was too old for this kind of foolishness. Seeing Ellie Mae nearby, Granny told her that she could see Mark tall and handsome in his uniform again if she would just take the frog out of the cage and kiss it. Ellie Mae felt very silly about the idea. She did not want to kiss a frog, but Granny insisted, saying that if she did not, the poor thing might swell up and burst. Ellie Mae finally agreed to take the cage outside. Once she was alone, she let the frog out of the cage so it could hop down to the pond for a swim. Just then, the Real Mark Templeton arrived, carrying the scuba gear he had promised. Mark asked about the frog, and Ellie Mae explained it was just Granny's pet frog, whom she had named Mark. Mark felt a bit strange about the name, but Ellie Mae told him that Granny was quite fond of the creature. Granny appeared and, seeing Mark standing there in human form, believed a miracle had happened because Ellie Mae had kissed the frog. She was overjoyed until she heard that they still planned to go swimming. The chaos at the pond. Granny became very upset. She warned Ellie Mae to stay away from the water and told Mark not to get wet again. She was convinced that the water shrank his brain and changed his body. Mark tried to explain there was no danger, but Granny would not listen. When Mark prepared to head to the pool, Granny became desperate. She actually jumped onto his back to stop him from moving. Jed and Jethro walked in to find this chaotic scene. Jed told Granny to stop riding the poor boy, but She refused to let go until he promised to stay out of the water. Jethro, thinking it was a game, offered to play horse and rider too. Jed eventually had to tell Jethro to carry Granny up to her room so she could calm down. Granny kicked and protested the whole way, calling them all crazy. Later, in a strange fever dream or a vivid nightmare, Granny imagined a wedding taking place. In this dream, Ellie Mae was marrying Mark, but Mark was a literal frog standing at the altar. A judge was there to perform the ceremony. Granny screamed for them to stop, but the dream continued. Jethro appeared as the best man and said the groom was late because he wanted to take a shower. Granny was horrified, knowing that getting wet would keep him in his frog form. The judge pronounced them frog and wife, and Granny woke up screaming for help. Jed rushed in to check on her. He realized she was still caught up in her fears. He tried to give her a tranquilizer to help her relax and told her to sit back and light up her pipe. He wanted her to rest and stop worrying about Ellie Mae's romance, schemes, and lessons. While the family dealt with Granny's worries, Mr. Drysdale, the bank president, was hatching a plan. He realized that if Mark Templeton married Ellie Mae, he would be connected to a fortune of $30 or $40 million. Mr. Drysdale decided he needed to get on Mark's good side immediately. He even dressed up in Navy fatigues to impress the young lieutenant. Mr. Drysdale pretended to be an old Navy man who had seen action in famous battles like Midway and the Philippines. He told Mark that he only acted mean before because he had spent 5 years taking orders from young officers and it made him grumpy. Mark, being a kind soul, forgave him. They shook hands, and Mr. Drysdale felt his plan was working perfectly. Back at the mansion, Jed told Jethro to keep a close watch on Granny's room to make sure she rested. Jethro, proud of his 6th grade education, took the job seriously. He tried to cheer her up by reading from a book by an old friend named Jim Owen. The book was full of funny stories about fishing and life back home, but Granny did not want to hear anything related to water. Jethro then had an idea. He found 2 frogs down by the pond and brought them to Granny, thinking they would be good company. When Granny saw the 2 frogs, she was heartbroken. She truly believed these 2 frogs were Mark and Ellie Mae, who had finally turned into amphibians because they stayed in the water too long. The doctor's office. Deeply concerned, Granny took the 2 frogs back to Dr. Klingler. She introduced them as Mark and Ellie Mae. The doctor, trying to be patient, listened as Granny explained that they wanted to get married. The doctor suggested that perhaps a ceremony wasn't important for frogs, but Granny was offended. She insisted that her granddaughter was a decent, church-going girl who sang in the choir. Granny told the doctor that he had to turn the 2 frogs back into a handsome lieutenant and a beautiful blonde girl. She left the frogs there, telling him to call Miss Jane when the job was done. The doctor was left staring at the 2 frogs, feeling completely overwhelmed by the situation. Back at the house, Jed was looking for Granny. He found that she had hung the bedsheets out the window to dry. Jethro explained that he had given her 2 frogs earlier, and Jed started to realize how confused the poor woman had become. A short time later, Miss Jane arrived at the house with the 2 frogs in a cage. Granny saw Mark and Ellie Mae walking toward her, fully human and healthy. She believed the doctor had performed a miracle. She was so happy that she promised to go take a nap because she was plumb wrung out from the stress. However, just as she was about to leave, Mark mentioned that he was going to give Ellie Mae another underwater swimming lesson in the morning. Granny's eyes went wide. All her progress was lost in a second. She screamed and jumped onto Mark's back once again, refusing to let him go near the water. Jed had to run over and pull her off, while the young lovers could only laugh at the wild and wonderful family they belonged to. Through all the confusion and the silly misunderstandings, one thing was clear. Life in Beverly Hills was never going to be boring for the Clampett family.